The fierce Wyoming winter of 1882 brought more than just howling winds and freezing temperatures to Katherine Sullivan's life. It delivered a desperate choice. Standing at the doorstep of the isolated ranch house, her threadbare coat offering little protection against the biting cold, she raised her trembling fist and knocked. This single act of courage would forever alter the course of not only her life, but also that of the brooding cowboy and his young son who dwelled within. The door swung open, revealing a tall man with weathered features and wary eyes. His calloused hand gripped the doorframe as he assessed the unexpected visitor on his porch. "Can I help you, madam?" His voice was deep and rough, like boots on gravel. Katherine clutched her small bag tighter. "Mr. Dawson, I'm Katherine Sullivan. I've come about the housekeeper position." Hayes Dawson's expression darkened. "Housekeeper? I didn't post for no housekeeper." "Your son," Katherine began, her voice faltering slightly, "your son wrote to me, in response to my advertisement in the Cheyenne newspaper." Hayes Dawson's face transformed from confusion to understanding, then quickly to anger. "Samuel!" he bellowed over his shoulder. "Get out here!" A boy of about 10 appeared in the doorway, his mop of dark hair falling across earnest eyes that widened at the sight of Katherine. "You wrote to this lady?" Hayes demanded. The boy nodded, standing his ground despite his father's evident displeasure. "Yes, sir, I did." Hayes turned back to Katherine, his jaw set tight. "I'm sorry, Miss Sullivan. There's been a misunderstanding. We don't need a housekeeper." "But Pa," Samuel protested, "you said yourself we can't go on like this. The ranch needs, that's enough." Hayes cut him off sharply. His eyes softened slightly as they returned to Katherine. "I'm sorry you've traveled all this way for nothing." Katherine felt the cold seep deeper into her bones, but it wasn't just the winter chill causing her to shiver. After everything she'd endured to get here, selling her few remaining possessions, surviving the treacherous journey west, she couldn't simply turn around and leave. "Mr. Dawson," she said, summoning her remaining courage, "I've come 20 days by train and stagecoach. I have nowhere else to go. I ask only for a chance to prove my worth." Hayes hesitated, conflict evident in his expression. Samuel seized the moment, tugging at his father's sleeve. "Please, Pa, just for a little while." A gust of wind blew snow across the porch, and Katherine couldn't suppress a shiver. Hayes Dawson sighed deeply, then stepped aside. "1 week," he said firmly. "You can stay 1 week and then we'll see." Katherine entered the Dawson home, immediately struck by the state of disarray. Dishes were piled high in the kitchen sink, clothes lay scattered across furniture, and a fine layer of dust covered every surface. The home wasn't just untidy, it was crying out for care. "Samuel, show Miss Sullivan to the spare room," Hayes instructed before disappearing through a door Katherine assumed led to his bedroom. Samuel grinned up at her, revealing a missing front tooth. "Don't mind Pa," he whispered. "He's been different since Ma died, but I knew you'd come." "I just knew it." Katherine followed the boy up a narrow staircase to a small but clean bedroom under the eaves. "How did you know I'd come, Samuel? Your letter sounded nice, and we really do need help." He paused at the doorway. "Pa works too hard with the ranch, and I'm not big enough yet to do everything else." Katherine set her bag on the bed. "How long has your mother been gone?" 2 years now. She got sick one winter, and by spring she was gone." His matter-of-fact tone couldn't hide the pain in his young eyes. "Pa doesn't like to talk about her." "I'm sorry, Samuel. You can call me Sam. Only Pa calls me Samuel, especially when he's cross." He lingered in the doorway. "Miss Sullivan, are you going to leave after a week?" Katherine looked at the hopeful face before her and felt something stir inside her chest, a feeling she'd thought long buried beneath layers of hardship and disappointment. "That depends on your father, Sam. He'll want you to stay," Sam said with certainty. I know he will." After Sam left, Katherine sat on the edge of the bed and wondered what she'd gotten herself into. Hayes Dawson clearly hadn't wanted her here, and she had no illusions about the challenge ahead, but she had nowhere else to go. After fleeing Boston and the scandal that had destroyed her reputation, the Wyoming territory represented her last hope for a fresh start. She unpacked her meager belongings, 2 dresses besides the one she wore, a hairbrush, a small Bible that had belonged to her mother, and a locket containing the only image she had of her parents. Everything she owned in the world fit into a single carpet bag. When she ventured downstairs, she found Hayes pulling on his coat by the door. "I've got cattle to tend to," he said without looking at her. "Samuel knows the routine. Supper's at 6. "Mr. Dawson," Katherine said, stopping him before he could leave. "I understand I wasn't your choice, but while I'm here, I intend to earn my keep. Is there anything specific you'd like me to attend to first?" Hayes finally met her gaze, his blue eyes intense. "Miss Sullivan, I don't know what Samuel told you in his letter, but we've managed fine on our own. I don't want you getting comfortable here." Katherine straightened her shoulders. "I understand completely. 1 week, as agreed." Something flashed in his eyes, perhaps surprise at her composure, before he nodded and stepped out into the snow. Once alone with Sam, Katherine rolled up her sleeves. "Well then, shall we get started?" The boys' enthusiasm was infectious as they tackled the kitchen together. Katherine washed dishes while Sam dried and put them away, chattering about the ranch, his school in town 5 miles away, and his father's prize stallion. "Pa's the best horseman in the territory," Sam declared proudly. "People bring their horses from miles around for him to train." "Is that the main business of the ranch?" Katherine asked, scrubbing at a particularly stubborn pot. "Mostly cattle, but the horses are special to Pa. He says they understand him better than people do." By mid-afternoon, the kitchen was transformed. Katherine had swept and mopped the floor, organized the pantry, and started a hearty stew with ingredients she'd found. The simple act of creating order from chaos felt therapeutic. Sam showed her around the rest of the house, a modest but well-built structure with 4 bedrooms upstairs, a sitting room, dining room, and kitchen downstairs. Everything spoke of neglect rather than poverty. The furniture was of good quality, and there were signs that the house had once been a warm, well-kept home. "Ma used to have flowers everywhere in summer," Sam told her, pointing to empty pots on the windowsills. "And she played the piano." He indicated a dust-covered instrument in the corner of the sitting room. Katherine ran her fingers over the piano keys, producing a discordant sound from the long, untuned instrument. "Do you play?" Sam shook his head. "Pa won't let anyone touch it. Says it reminds him too much of her." Katherine felt a tug of sympathy for Hayes Dawson. Beneath his gruff exterior lay a man still mourning his wife. She understood loss all too well. She'd lost both parents to influenza 5 years earlier, leaving her to fend for herself in a world that had little use for a young woman without means or connections. By the time Hayes returned as dusk fell, the house had undergone a remarkable transformation. The scent of beef stew filled the air, the floors gleamed, and the sitting room had been dusted and organized. Hayes stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable as he surveyed the changes. "You've been busy," he finally said, removing his hat and coat. "I hope you don't mind," Katherine replied. "Supper's nearly ready." "Doesn't Pa need to clean up first?" Sam piped up, giving his father a meaningful look. Hayes glanced down at his mud-caked boots and dirt-streaked clothes. "Right," he muttered, then disappeared upstairs. When he returned, his face was scrubbed clean and his hair still damp. He'd changed into a clean shirt, and Katherine couldn't help but notice how the simple act of grooming transformed him. Without the layer of trail dust, Hayes Dawson was a strikingly handsome man, with strong features and eyes the color of the summer sky. Dinner was a quiet affair. Hayes offered little conversation beyond complimenting the stew, but Katherine caught him watching her several times when he thought her attention was elsewhere. Sam chattered enough for all three of them, eager to share stories about school and his friends in town. After Sam went to bed, Katherine found herself alone with Hayes for the first time. She busied herself with cleaning the dishes, acutely aware of his presence as he sat at the table, a cup of coffee cradled in his hands. "Why did you answer Samuel's letter?" he asked abruptly. Katherine paused, considering her answer carefully. "I needed a position, and his letter was sincere. He described a home that needed care. And that's all. You didn't think it strange that a child was writing to hire help?" She turned to face him. "Of course I did. But desperation makes one less discerning about opportunities, Mr. Dawson. What kind of desperation drives a woman like you to the Wyoming territory? You're educated, well-spoken. Surely there were positions back east." Katherine tensed. "My reasons are my own, just as I imagine yours are for being suspicious of a woman who simply wants to work for honest wages." Hayes's expression hardened. "This territory is full of people running from something, Miss Sullivan. I'm just trying to determine what sort of trouble you might be bringing to my door. I assure you, Mr. Dawson, I'm not running from the law if that's your concern." Katherine turned back to the dishes, her hands trembling slightly. "But everyone deserves a second chance, don't you think?" The silence stretched between them until Hayes finally stood. "Samuel has taken a shine to you," he said. "That boy's been lonely since his mother passed. I'd appreciate it if you'd be mindful of that fact when your week is up." With that, he left the kitchen, leaving Katherine alone with her thoughts and the growing certainty that Hayes Dawson was determined to send her away, regardless of how well she performed her duties. The next morning, Katherine rose before dawn and had breakfast waiting when Hayes came downstairs. He seemed surprised but offered a gruff thank you before heading out to the barn. Sam came down shortly after, his face lighting up at the sight of pancakes. "Pa never makes pancakes," he said, drowning the stack in syrup. "He says they take too long." "Well, I'm here to make things easier for both of you," Katherine replied, sitting down with her own plate. "Will you teach me to read better?" Sam asked suddenly. "Miss Jenkins at school says I'm behind the other children, but Pa doesn't have time to help me practice." Katherine felt a surge of purpose. This was something concrete she could offer. "Of course, Sam. We can start tonight after supper." The days fell into a pattern. Katherine would rise early to prepare breakfast and pack lunches for both Hayes and Sam. After seeing them off, Hayes to his ranch work, and Sam to school on the days he attended, she would clean, mend clothes, bake bread, and prepare dinner. When Sam returned, they would practice his reading together before Hayes came in for the evening meal. Hayes remained distant, but Katherine noticed small changes. He began removing his boots at the door without being reminded. He complimented her cooking more frequently, and occasionally she would catch him watching her with an expression that wasn't entirely suspicion. On her fourth day at the ranch, Katherine was hanging laundry on the line behind the house when she heard the sound of hoofbeats. A rider approached from the direction of town, a woman in her 40s, smartly dressed despite the practicalities of riding. "Well, well," the woman called as she dismounted. "So the rumors are true. Hayes Dawson has finally hired help." Katherine wiped her hands on her apron. "Good afternoon. I'm Katherine Sullivan." "Martha Jenkins," the woman replied, offering her hand. "I'm the school teacher in town. I've been trying to convince Hayes to hire someone to help with Samuel for ages. You must be Miss Jenkins. Sam has mentioned you." Martha's eyes crinkled with warmth. That boy is bright as a new penny, just needs some consistent guidance. His father does his best, but—" She let the sentence trail off meaningfully. "Are you planning to stay on, then?" Katherine hesitated. "Mr. Dawson has only agreed to a week's trial," Martha laughed. "That sounds like Hayes, stubborn as they come, but he needs help, especially with spring roundup coming. The ranch has suffered since Caroline died." Katherine invited Martha inside for tea, grateful for female company after days surrounded by males. As they talked, Martha painted a clearer picture of Hayes Dawson. "He was devastated when Caroline passed," Martha explained. "They were childhood sweethearts, married young. When the consumption took her, something in Hayes died too. He's thrown himself into the ranch work, but the house and Samuel have suffered for it." "Sam is a wonderful boy," Katherine said, "so eager to learn." "He is. And he needs a woman's influence." Martha studied Katherine over the rim of her teacup. "You're not what I expected when I heard Hayes had a woman staying at the ranch." "Oh, you're refined, educated. Most women who come out here looking for work are, well, different." Katherine tensed. "I assure you my intentions are honorable. I simply need work." Martha smiled kindly. "I didn't mean to imply otherwise. It's just unusual, that's all. But perhaps exactly what the Dawson men need." After Martha left, Katherine pondered their conversation. Hayes's continued grief explained much about his reluctance to let anyone new into their lives. She couldn't blame him. Loss had a way of making one wary of forming new attachments. That evening, as they sat around the table eating the apple pie Katherine had baked, Sam made an announcement. "Pa, Miss Jenkins came by today to see Miss Sullivan." Hayes looked up sharply. "Did she now?" Katherine nodded. "She was very kind. We had a nice chat." "About what?" Hayes's tone was casual, but his eyes were intent. "School matters mostly," Katherine replied smoothly, unwilling to share Martha's more personal revelations. "She thinks Sam is making excellent progress with his rating." "Miss Sullivan's been helping me every day, Pa," Sam added eagerly. "She says I'll be caught up with the other children in no time." Hayes studied his son's animated face, then shifted his gaze to Katherine. Something in his expression had softened. "That's good to hear." Later, after Sam had gone to bed, Hayes lingered in the sitting room where Katherine was mending one of Sam's shirts. He stood by the window, looking out into the darkness, his profile illuminated by the lamplight. "Samuel's mother used to sit in that very chair," he said suddenly. "Mending his clothes just like that." Katherine's needle paused mid-stitch. "I can sit elsewhere if you prefer." "No," Hayes said quickly, turning to face her. It's good to see someone there again." He crossed the room and sat in the chair opposite hers. "Miss Sullivan, I owe you an apology. I've been less than welcoming." Katherine set her sewing aside. "You had no reason to welcome me, Mr. Dawson. I arrived uninvited." "Nevertheless, you've brought order back to this house." Samuel smiles more than he has in months. He paused, seeming to struggle with his next words. "Your trial week ends tomorrow." Katherine's heart sank. Despite her best efforts, he was still going to send her away. "I understand. I'll be packed and ready to leave in the morning." "That's not what I was going to say," Hayes said quickly. We would like you to stay, permanently, as our housekeeper." Relief washed over Katherine. "Thank you, Mr. Dawson, I accept." "Hayes," he said quietly. "If you're staying on, you might as well call me Hayes." "Katherine," she offered in return, a small smile playing at her lips. Something shifted between them in that moment, a tentative bridge across the chasm Hayes had maintained since her arrival. It wasn't friendship exactly, but it was a beginning. The next morning, a blizzard swept across the territory, trapping them in the house for 3 days. The forced proximity could have been awkward, but instead, it cemented Katherine's place in the household. Hayes taught her to play chess. Sam shared his prized collection of arrowheads, and together they weathered the storm in unexpected harmony. When the snow finally cleared, Katherine noticed a change in Hayes. He lingered over breakfast, sharing stories about the ranch and asking her opinion on matters that surprised her, like what color to paint the sitting room come spring, or whether Sam should continue with his piano lessons in town. "I was thinking," he said one evening as they sat by the fire while Sam dozed on the rug, "that Samuel should have a proper birthday celebration next month. He'll be 11. Katherine looked up from her knitting. "That's a wonderful idea. We could invite his friends from school." "Caroline always made such a fuss over birthdays," Hayes continued, his voice growing distant. "I haven't been able to, since she's been gone." "It's difficult to maintain traditions when you're grieving," Katherine said gently. "But Sam would love it, I'm sure." Hayes studied her face in the firelight. "You understand grief, don't you?" Katherine nodded, setting aside her knitting. "I lost both my parents 5 years ago, influenza. I'm sorry." His words were simple but sincere. "Life goes on," Katherine said, "as it must." "Yes," Hayes agreed, his eyes never leaving hers. "It does." As winter gradually gave way to spring, Katherine found herself increasingly drawn to Hayes Dawson. Beneath his gruff exterior was a man of integrity and kindness. She observed how gently he handled injured animals, how patiently he taught Sam to ride, how respectfully he treated his ranch hands. For his part, Hayes seemed to be thawing toward her as well. He began bringing her wildflowers he found while riding the range. He built her a set of shelves for her growing collection of books ordered from the catalog. And most tellingly, he started sharing stories about Caroline hesitantly at first, then with increasing ease, as if speaking of his late wife to Katherine somehow honored rather than betrayed her memory. Sam watched these developments with barely concealed delight. Katherine often caught him observing their interactions with a hopeful expression. One evening, as she tucked him into bed, he asked the question that had clearly been on his mind. "You like my pa, Miss Katherine?" Katherine smoothed his blanket, buying time. "Of course I do, Sam. Your father is a good man." "No, I mean, do you like him? The way Ma used to." Heat rushed to Katherine's cheeks. "Sam, that's not an appropriate question." "Why not? Pa smiles when you're around. And you look at him special sometimes." "Good night, Sam," Katherine said firmly, though her heart was racing at his observations. "I just think it would be nice," Sam mumbled as she blew out his lamp, "if you stayed forever." The boy's words haunted Katherine as spring blossomed fully across the ranch. She had indeed developed feelings for Hayes Dawson, feelings that went far beyond employee and employer, but she dared not act on them. For one thing, she wasn't certain Hayes felt the same way. For another, she still harbored her secret, the scandal that had driven her from Boston. Hayes had never pressed her about her past, seeming content with the woman she was now rather than who she had been. But Katherine lived in fear that her history would catch up with her, and when it did, Hayes's tentative trust would shatter. The matter came to a head unexpectedly in late April. Hayes had ridden into town for supplies, taking Sam with him. Katherine seized the opportunity to give the house a thorough cleaning, including the rarely used front parlor where Caroline's piano stood. As she dusted the instrument, Katherine couldn't resist sitting down and playing a simple melody. Her fingers were stiff from disuse. It had been years since she'd had access to a piano, but muscle memory soon took over. She became so engrossed in the music that she didn't hear the front door open. "You play beautifully." Katherine jumped at the sound of Hayes's voice, her hands crashing discordantly on the keys. She stood quickly, mortified. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have known," Hayes interrupted, crossing the room to stand beside her. "Don't apologize. It's been too long since this house had music." I thought you and Sam wouldn't be back until supper. The weather's turning. We came back early. Hayes gestured to the piano bench. Please continue. Hesitantly, Katherine sat back down and began to play again a simple folk tune her mother had taught her. Hayes stood beside her, watching her hands move across the keys. When she finished, the silence between them hummed with unspoken words. Caroline loved music, Hayes finally said. She taught piano lessons to the children in town. Sam mentioned that. He said you wouldn't let anyone touch the piano after she died. Hayes's expression tightened. It felt wrong somehow, like an intrusion. And now, Katherine asked softly, now it feels like the right thing. Hayes sat beside her on the bench, their shoulders nearly touching. Katherine, there's something I need to ask you, her pulse quickened. Yes. Who are you running from? The question caught her off guard. What makes you think I'm running from someone? A woman with your education and refinement doesn't just appear in Wyoming territory seeking work as a housekeeper without reason. His eyes held her steadily. I respected your privacy, but if you're going to be part of our lives, I need to know. Katherine's hands trembled in her lap. And if you don't like what you hear, try me. Taking a deep breath, Katherine revealed the truth she'd kept hidden. I was engaged to be married in Boston. My fiancé was from a prominent family, the Harringtons. I discovered he had gambling debts and was embezzling from his family's company. When I confronted him, she swallowed hard. He struck me. I ended our engagement. Hayes's expression darkened. Did he hurt you badly? A bruised face, nothing more, but what came after was worse. He claimed I had stolen jewelry from his mother, that I was unstable. His family believed him. My reputation was destroyed. No respectable household would hire me. I had no family to defend me, no resources except what I could earn. So you came west. Katherine nodded. As far as I could get from Boston society. I placed advertisements in newspapers across the territories, hoping someone would give me a chance. And Samuel's letter found you. Yes, Katherine smiled faintly. I was beginning to lose hope when it arrived. Hayes was quiet for a long moment. Thank you for telling me. Are you going to send me away? The question that had lurked in her heart for months finally emerged. Hayes looked stunned. Send you away? Why would I do that? Because of my past. Because of the scandal. Katherine, Hayes said, taking her hand in his, we all have pasts. What matters to me is who you are now, the woman who brought light back into this house, who helps my son read, who makes us both remember what it's like to be a family. Katherine's eyes filled with tears. I've been so afraid you'd discover the truth and think less of me. I could never think less of you. Hayes's voice had dropped to a near whisper. If anything, knowing what you've overcome makes me admire you more. The intensity in his eyes made Katherine's breath catch. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, Hayes leaned forward and pressed his lips to hers in a gentle kiss. Katherine responded, her heart soaring with a joy she'd thought forever lost to her. When they separated, Hayes rested his forehead against hers. I never thought I'd feel this way again after Caroline, he admitted. I didn't want to. But you changed that, Katherine. You made me remember how to live, not just exist. A sound from the doorway drew their attention. Sam stood there, his eyes wide, a grin spreading across his face. Sam, Hayes began, obviously embarrassed at being caught in such a moment. We were just, are you going to marry Miss Katherine now, Pa? Sam interrupted, practically bouncing with excitement. Hayes looked back at Katherine, his expression a mix of humor and tenderness. That's getting a bit ahead of ourselves, don't you think? But Sam was undeterred. But you like her, and she likes you, and she belongs here with us. Samuel, Hayes said, his tone warning. Don't send her away, Pa, Sam pleaded suddenly, his exuberance giving way to genuine concern. She feels like home. The simple declaration hung in the air between them. Hayes looked from his son to Katherine, his expression softening into something that made her heart skip. "She does, doesn't she?" he said quietly. 3 months later, as summer painted the Wyoming landscape in vibrant greens and golds, Katherine Sullivan became Katherine Dawson in a simple ceremony at the town church. Martha Jenkins arranged flowers from Caroline's garden. The ranch hands formed an honor guard with their horses, and Sam stood proudly beside his father, holding the rings. The reception was held at the ranch, with tables set up under the cottonwood trees. As twilight fell, lanterns were lit, casting a golden glow over the celebration. Hayes pulled Katherine away from the festivities for a moment, leading her to the porch steps. "Happy, Mrs. Dawson?" he asked, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "More than I ever thought possible," she answered truthfully. Hayes took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "I want you to know something. Caroline will always have a place in my heart." "As she should," Katherine interrupted gently. "Let me finish," Hayes continued. "She'll always have a place in my heart, but loving you doesn't diminish that. It's as if my heart expanded. You haven't replaced her. You've created something new and wonderful." Katherine leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. "Thank you for that. And for giving me a home when I thought I'd never have one again." "Thanks, Samuel," Hayes said with a chuckle. "He knew before I did that you belonged here." As if summoned by his name, Sam bounded up to them, his face flushed with excitement. "Pa, Miss Katherine, I mean Ma." They're about to cut the cake. The title so casually bestowed brought tears to Katherine's eyes. Hayes noticed, squeezing her hand in understanding. "We'll be right there, son," he said. Sam darted back to the party, but not before giving Katherine an impulsive hug that nearly knocked her off her feet. "I told Pa not to send you away," he whispered. "I knew you were supposed to stay forever." Katherine watched him go, her heart full to bursting. "He's an extraordinary boy." "Like his mother," Hayes said. Then, with a smile that reached all the way to his eyes, he added, "Both of them." Hayes kissed her then, a promise of all the years to come, years they would build together, forging a family from the broken pieces of their separate pasts. As they walked hand in hand back to their wedding celebration, Katherine realized that the desperate choice she'd made that cold winter day had led her not just to survival, but to a love and belonging she'd never dared to hope for. And when Hayes whispered in her ear as they cut their wedding cake, "Welcome home, Katherine Dawson," she knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be.